In this lesson, we'll conclude our discussion of the spinal cord by taking a look at spinal cord reflexes. So, a reflex is a fast, predictable, automatic response to a change in the environment. These are something we're just wired with, right? We're just wired to have reflexes. It's not something that you are learned, right? When you picked up, you know, something hot for the first time on a stove, let's say, you didn't like look at it and your mother had to tell you, oh, you better drop that, you're going to burn yourself. Didn't work that way, right? You touched that thing and it was like boom, right? Your hand came back right away. That's a reflex. So what I want to show you, there are 5 components to something known as the reflex arc. Let's go to a picture here for a moment. So this is actually going to tie together some of the things we did in these previous lessons on the spinal cord. So the first thing, in our skin, all throughout the body, we have different receptors that are just kind of monitoring any changes in the environment. So let's just say in this person's palm, they have these receptors, right? These are the dendrites of a neuron, and the person touches, looks like a tack right here, right? So the receptor is the first part of the reflex arc. It receives the stimulus. Then the action potential is going to go into the sensory neuron. So if you notice here, the sensory neuron goes back to the spinal cord. Here's the cell body of that sensory neuron, and it lives in the ganglia, right? This is the posterior ganglia right here. Right here's the posterior root of the spinal nerve. All right, so the sensory neuron going in the back of the spinal cord, right into the posterior horn. That's the second part of the reflex arc. In the spinal cord, we have neurons that process the information. So we're going to call this the integrating center or the integrating neurons. These are the neurons receiving the information and processing the information. If something needs to be done and a signal gets sent out, the integrating neuron is going to communicate with the fourth part of the reflex arc known as the motor neuron. Right, so this black neuron right here, notice the cell body lives in the anterior horn, and then the axon leaves through the anterior root. Right, they're calling it ventral root. Same thing. Right, so the axon leaves the anterior root. That's the fourth component. And then the part of the body that's going to respond, in this case to pull us away from the sharp tack, is called the effector. Right, the effector is going to be the fifth component of the reflex arc. Okay, so you should be able to put them into the correct sequence. Receptor to the sensory neuron. In the spinal cord are the integrating neurons, right? They kind of process the information. The outflow, the fourth component, is the motor neuron. And then the part of the body that's going to respond is the effector. Okay, and again, these are controlled by the spinal cord. The brain is not involved with any of this here. A signal does get sent up to the brain, so the brain finds out about it. But if you think about the next time this happens, if you do touch something hot or sharp or whatever, if you pull yourself away, notice you're already pulled away by the time your brain finds out about it. Okay, so the brain is not involved in these spinal cord reflexes. The spinal cord integrates it itself. Okay, and that concludes this lesson on the reflex arc.